Hello, everyone. You're listening to Unlocking Greatness podcast with Zenja Glass. I am going to do my best to give you what took me almost 14 hours this past Saturday to get from about 7 in the morning until about 9 or 10 or 11 o'clock that night. And that's not an exaggeration. I pretty much sat in the same area in my house, deep into Bible study, prayer, meditation, listening to sermons, you name it. Because I wanted to get the answer to what are we supposed to do when we don't know the next step that God wants us to make and we're waiting on Him and we feel we've been waiting for a while. So in other words, how do we wait on God without getting anxious or stressed or worried about things? Especially, when you've been waiting a long time, how is it that you continue to wait and trust during that season when it appears that He's either taking His time to answer you or hiding you, which I talk about that in my book. That'll be coming out soon. I'll talk about that in another episode. But there's definitely a chapter on that. But how do we wait in this time? And so I had a lot going on in my life, from my business to my family. And you ever have those moments where you're just kind of wrestling a little bit and you're trying to figure out, okay, God, I know you told me to go this route, but why won't you tell me the next step? Or what is this delay that I'm feeling in my spirit? Something is just off. Or why are you holding me back from doing this when I feel like I'm ready to do it? Or something like that. This is what this message is about. And I pray to God that He blesses me to give you what He's given me. And it took about a good 13, 14 hours because I feel so much more at peace. I feel like bricks have been taken off of me because now I'm finally beginning to see when God has us in a state of waiting or where He's hiding us or where we don't get the answers we're looking for. One of the worst things that we can do is to move forth by moving Him out of the way and doing what we think is best to do. That's one of the worst things to do. We can't fight against God by saying, you know what, you're moving a little bit too slow for me. I've been waiting for quite a while. I'm just going to do this. It's so important that we wait on His timing and on His will for our lives. There's a couple passages, and I'm just going to talk about them briefly. I don't want this episode being too long. I want to get straight to the point with it. Can you imagine what would have happened if Ruth, you know the story of Naomi and Ruth. You can read the book of Ruth. It's only about 4 or so chapters. But can you imagine what would have happened if Ruth would have taken matters into her own hands? And she would have not have gone with Naomi, right? And she would have gone ahead and done her own thing instead of sticking with Naomi. She never would have had that opportunity to meet Boaz. And many of us know that Boaz ended up marrying her, and this is where the whole lineage of David came from. Well, you can take that all the way down to Jesus, in fact. That's where that whole lineage came from, because she waited on that timing from God. I think about Joseph. I spent quite a bit of time, and you guys know I talk about Joseph probably just as much as I talk about Jesus, I talk about Joseph. I went back and revisited his story. When Joseph was in prison, and you guys can read Genesis chapters 37, I think, through 45 is the story of Joseph. Remember how he helped that cupbearer? And then when the cupbearer got out of jail, he asked him to remember him. Remember, we've talked about that on at least 3 episodes. Remember when the cupbearer forgot about him for about 2 years? What happened as Joseph, of course, was waiting, because God gave him a dream and he's, poor thing, just was waiting forever. What happened once Joseph was released from prison and he interpreted that dream? I think it was for Pharaoh. What happened? The Bible teaches us, and I guess I may as well turn to it. Where's my glasses? The Bible teaches us that he was put in charge. Let me go to Genesis really quickly here. He was put in charge of just about everything. And if I remember correctly, the scriptures goes on to say that he became second in command. So in Genesis 41, just jumping to verse, I think this is verse 39. It says, Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, Since God has made all this known to you, there is no one so discerning and wise as you. You shall be in charge of my palace, and all my people are to submit to your orders. Only with respect to the throne will I be greater than you. So Pharaoh said to Joseph, I hereby put you in charge of the whole land of Egypt. And then Pharaoh went on to give him a ring and a robe and really just gave him pretty much everything. It dawned on me, what would have happened had Joseph gone ahead with his own plans and didn't wait during that whole time of being hidden, during that whole time of waiting for God to bring this dream to reality that God had given him years prior. Remember when he was younger, he had the dream about the sun and the moon, and I think it was 11 stars and what have you. Remember his brothers was jealous of him and sold him, and he ended up going to Potiphar's house. Potiphar's wife wanted to sleep with him. Joseph ended up in jail. You remember that story. We've talked about it a lot. But look at the timing and the will of God. And so just imagine in that waiting period, can you imagine being in jail like he was in jail, right? He was in jail. He didn't deserve to be there. The only reason he got in trouble in the first place is because he had a dream that God showed him, what he would be doing, that he would be great, right? And can you imagine how he must have felt during that time of waiting? Like, God, what is this about? What the heck are you doing? I may as well just do my own thing, because obviously trying to honor you or trying to do whatever you want me to do is not working. He could have easily gone down that road. And look what happened. How it apparently could have been just a day, but from the moment he was released and he interpreted that dream, let's just all be in agreement. If it wasn't a day, it was very, very shortly thereafter. Pharaoh had that conversation with him and put him in charge. It's as if God came in and gave him all those years of loss that he didn't get. And you all know the story with Joseph. He was able to bless his family for generations to come. It's the timing. Sometimes when we think we want something and we think we're ready for it, sometimes we're really not ready for it at that moment, because God has to mature us. He has to, bless us with discernment. There are times when he's protecting us. Let's talk about that. Remember when Jesus was born? What happened? What did King Herod try to do? King Herod wanted to kill him. What did Joseph and Mary have to do? They had to flee to, was it Egypt? They had to flee to Egypt until King Herod died. And then that's when an angel visited them and said, hey, basically now you can come on back to Israel. Remember that? Remember, and I was thinking about Jesus when he was about 12 or so years old. You guys just got to bear with me. Really not trying to rush through much. I'm trying to take some bricks off your chest, to be quite honest with you. When Jesus was about 12 years old, I think that's Luke chapter 2. When Jesus was about 12 years old, that's when his parents couldn't find him. And he was in the temple courts basically learning, not only really, to be honest, it says in verse 46, Luke 2:46, after 3 days they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. And then it goes on to say when his parents found him, because they basically were like, where were you? We've been looking for you, right? But then what I picked up on here is in Luke chapter 2, verse 51 through 52 says, and then they went down to Nazareth with them. And then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. So during that time, think about it. You already been told at this point, you special, right? You have wise men coming to you when you're born. Your parents had to go to Egypt and hide you for a while because you are just that important that the king want to kill you as a baby. And I'm sure, I can only imagine, this story was being told to him as he was growing up. Can you imagine if Jesus ran ahead and said, you know what, I'm ready now to start this public ministry. I know more than the people in the temple courts. What am I waiting on? If I'm special and all of these people know who I am, then why not I start what I want to do right now? Does that make sense what I'm getting at? But when Jesus was 12, it just says that he was growing, in wisdom and growing in stature and in favor with man and with God. And it wasn't until the right time, and we all know his public ministry began somewhere around the age of 30, give or take, depending on which biblical scholar you listen to. But his primary part of his ministry was between 30 and 33, as many people would say. I think his primary ministry was his entire life, but that's another subject. But between 30 and 33, it wasn't until that perfect timing that Jesus did what he did. Does that make sense? Had anything happened sooner, it's almost as if we have to give God time to move things out of the way and position things so that when we get to wherever it is we're trying to get, not only do we have the spiritual maturity, the discernment, the discipline, whatever it is that we need to be able to handle that next level, but God moves people out of the way. Look at what happened to Herod. It wasn't until Herod died that the angel appeared and said, hey, now you guys can go back. God could be positioning and moving people out of your way, and you don't even know it. And you can be sitting there worried and stressing and wondering about, when is this going to happen? And when am I going to get this? And when is this dream going to happen for me? And when is blah, 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 blah. And all along, he can be maturing you, developing you, growing you, getting the timing right for where you're about to head, moving people out of your way. Let me say that again. Moving people out of your way that don't need to be there so that you can, and I don't mean necessarily have someone die, I just mean in general, moving people out of the way so that you can be positioned when you step into that next level. Remember, I did a podcast a long time ago, and I think I called it something about, can you handle the pressure? Something like that. And in that podcast, I talked about every single thing that we ask for, there's a level of pressure that comes with it, or a level of responsibility, as I like to say. Everything that we ask for. And so we have to be prepared and ready for that level. We have to be ready for it. Because when you get to that level, if we get there too soon and our character can't handle it, I think I talk about that. I mentioned something about that in my book. But if our character cannot handle that level that we are just so ready for, then we can end up having years and years of frustration and having to go all the way back and starting all over again. And that is if God even gives us that opportunity again. God has been working with me. I'm telling you. He's been working with me. I've been asking him about some things. I won't go into much detail. Some of it is business-wise. But I said, God, why is it that you kind of keep taking me around this circle right here? And finally, after a good 13 or so hours of going through scriptures and praying and all of that, I realized God has held me back for a number of reasons in certain areas of my life. Because number one, I need to have the discipline, the self-control. I need to have the spiritual discernment. I got to go even deeper. Now you may say, Z, you read your Bible and pray all the time. How much deeper can it get? It can get a lot deeper. I need to go deeper. I'm asking God, give me visions, give me dreams, let me see. Give me spiritual discernment so that even when I walk in a room, I can identify the spirits that are there. Show me which doors are for me, because not all open doors are good for you, baby. Let me please say that if you don't hear anything else. Not all open doors are good for you. That's part of the reason why I've talked about this before, and it's not in arrogance that I say this. It's in true humility. I have yet, at least that I think of, can't think of one time, but maybe it's been one time, but I probably can't remember. But I haven't taken on too many opportunities to speak in engagements and go to events and attend these seminars and places to speak. And I'm grateful. If you're one of those people who have asked me, I'm very grateful. So please don't take this the wrong way. But I have to sit back and discern, is this the right timing? Am I even spiritually mature enough? Do I know enough about what I'm talking about? Is this God's timing for me to do this, or am I just trying to grow an audience? Am I just trying to get more followers? That's why it's important that we stay grounded in where God has us. Because when doors come open, sometimes we think those doors are from God, and we think we need to run through it because, wow, that door just opened. It must be for me. I almost said baby because I call everybody baby, so I hope no one gets offended by that. But I will say the word baby because it's a term of endearment. Baby. Satan can open doors as well. And sometimes those doors that open can lead you down the wrong pathway. This is why we have to be patient and wait for God to reveal to us what doors we need to walk through, what is his timing and when and how we need to do it. We can't go too far ahead too soon. Why do you think Moses, can you imagine if Moses would have went to Pharaoh outside of God telling him to do that? Because Moses didn't want to do it in the first place, but that's another subject. But can you imagine him going to Pharaoh and telling him to let my people go? Because these are my people and you're doing them wrong. Can you imagine how that story would have worked itself out? But because he went in the timing and in the will of God, even though he didn't want to do it at first, right? Look what happened and how God worked that out. Every story in the Bible almost identifies with this. You can look at King David. I mean, look at Esther, before she went before the king. Almost every story in the Bible, as you read it, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm asking God for myself and for you all. There's a flow that happens in the spirit. And that's what I desire to be, in this flow. Just this flow that no matter what happens in life and how things may appear and what may be going on with the economy or with my business or, God, do I go in this direction or that direction? To stay in that flow. Does that make sense? And that flow comes from, you know what, God, I just desire to be in your presence. I desire your will for my life. I lay all my plans down before you, and I want you to show me the way to go. You show me. And until you show me the way to go, I'm going to continue doing what you last told me to do, right? And I'm going to use this time to just draw closer and closer to you. Just draw closer and closer to you. So I can be so tight and so close with you that you give me the spiritual discernment to know what doors are for me and what doors are not. I talk about in my book, and this is a chapter on being hidden, about how I'm so grateful that God didn't give me the things that I wanted at the time I thought I wanted and I thought I can handle it. Because it's only in hindsight. It's only in hindsight. That's the bad part. It's only in hindsight that I'm able to look back and see, thank you, God. You didn't do some of the things that I wanted you to do when I thought I was ready. My pride alone would have messed up every single thing, I'm here to tell you. My worldliness. There was just areas in my life where I hadn't repented of. I definitely would not have been a good steward over my money. There's things that I would have done that I know would have not been pleasing to God. You guys will learn all about that a little bit more when I got myself into a situation. But, wait till my book comes out and you read it and you'll learn a little bit more about that. There's some things I haven't talked about openly. But I just wasn't ready, but I thought I was. So I hope I'm encouraging you in this to know this is why we are to rejoice always in the Lord. Because even when we're in our season of waiting or our season of being hidden, and I know it's tough when we're waiting on an answer from God. Because you're like, see, I got bills to pay. I got things to do. I got, I don't even know which direction to go. I got to do something, right? I know that can be tough. I know that. But this is why you have to dive deeply into understanding the nature of God. Because as you dive deeper and deeper and deeper, you realize, wait a minute, he's not punishing me. He's either positioning me by molding my character, developing some things in me, like God is doing with me right now. He has me going back and really, to be honest, repenting of some things that I need to get right. Because in my business, I wasn't planning on going into this. I'm what you call a visionary. And for those of you who follow organizational charts, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. I'm what you call a visionary. So the visionaries come up with the creative ideas. They always have, something creative on their mind to do. They're energetic and they're ready to just take on the world. But there's another seat in organizations that are called integrators. And integrators are the ones who take care of all the detail-oriented things, make sure that all the steps and processes not only are implemented, which I'm pretty good at doing that, to be honest with you, but consistently followed through. And that's where there's been some areas in my life where I've fallen short. So I'm turning this into my confession now. Just consistently following through, because after a while, for a visionary person like me who's a visionary, some of those things can get a little boring when you're doing the routine thing over and over and over, week in and week out. And what God is showing me is the reason I haven't taken this particular part of your life to the next level is you have got to get disciplined and learn how, when you set up your structures and your processes and procedures, make sure that it's carried out and get yourself to a point where you can have an integrator in that seat and make sure that person is carrying it out. So I can only take you so high until you get this, because you're going to need that for the next level that I'm taking you. Now, I wasn't planning on even going into all of that, because that's my personal conviction, where God is really, after a good, I'd say 10 hours, that began to come in my spirit, and he began to reveal to me, baby, it's not that I don't want to take you from here to here. I desire to do that, but you got to be ready, and there's things that you've got to grow in to get there. I even went as far as taking a personality test. I won't even get into that, but some sort of what is it called? The Myers Briggs, something, Myers something, just to really dig. I went all in. You guys know when I do something, I go all in. So I went all in to just even see, wow, what personality traits do I have? Where do I follow in this? So that I can go deeper and understand where my shortfalls are. So when it was all said and done, I started my day off with being a little frustrated, right? Just a little like, God, when are you going to answer me in this? Like, I've been praying about this for the longest. I got people waiting on, me to implement certain programs and do certain things. What is the deal? And it wasn't until very late that night that the bricks began to just fall off of my chest because it was revealed to me. Because I was searching out this wisdom as though for hidden treasure. And so now instead of feeling punished or feeling frustrated or feeling like, God, when is this going to happen? Now there's a maturity in, wow, thank you for showing me that I need to grow in this area and manage this better so that at the next level, I can maintain what you are about to do. Does that make sense to somebody? Now, my situation may be totally different from yours, but if you understand the true nature of God and who He is, then you'll understand during these moments when you just don't know what to do, you can never go wrong with diving deep into your scriptures, asking God to show you, what is it in me that doesn't look like you? Those are the words I use. What doesn't smell like you? So start off there. And that's just basically repenting. You can turn to Galatians, I think it's 5:19 through 21 or 22 or something like that. You can go through Galatians, read through sins, read through all of that. Just say, God, what is it in me that doesn't smell like you? Let's get that out. What are the areas I need to repent of? So let's start there, walking in obedience, right? And then go into the nature of who He is. And then you're going to learn as you discover the flow of how God flows in His Word. Then you're going to discover, wow, there are so many stories in the Bible where God was really protecting them because He went ahead of them. He went ahead of them to protect them. And all this time, they were thinking that, something's off, but God was really just protecting them and preparing the way. And then you're going to read their stories in the Bible where, wow, they were growing in wisdom. They were growing in stature. God was giving them discernment. Even John, I'm going to end this soon. But even John, now this is a passage I forgot about in the Bible. In Luke chapter 1, talks about the birth of John the Baptist. So chapter 1 and verse 80, I didn't even know there was 80 verses anyway. In verse 80, talking about John, it says, and the child grew and became strong in spirit. And he lived in the desert until he appeared publicly to Israel. All those years, you can read the whole chapter if you want. All those years, John was being hidden away, became strong in spirit. Do you get that? Because do you know what was on John's plate to prepare the way for Jesus and all the mess he had to go through? So can you imagine if there was a little bit of arrogance, like I'm the one that's on to prepare the way, I think I'm ready. God, when? I'm not going to wait on you no more. I'm just going to do it. Can you imagine if you take your butt out there trying to do something that you ain't ready to do because you're done waiting on that green light from God, you got all these pressures on you and you just going to do it. Can you imagine what you can be getting yourself into? Now, before I end this, I'm not trying to scare anybody because I do believe that God is able to make crooked roads straight. That's all throughout the Bible as well. Thank you, Jesus, that He can say, okay, you messed up, but this open door I had for you over here, let me move it over here. So thank God He not only has the ability to open doors, but He can move doors. But I am learning the value and the wisdom of waiting on Him. And I can't explain it, but something shifted in me around, I don't know what time it was. I know it was late because my family was like, I know my husband was probably like, what in the world? Like the whole day you've been sitting here in the living room and in the dining room. But anyway, some time around, 10 something at night, I know it was close to 11, something shifted radically in my heart. And then I began to see clearly, wow, it is a gift to be hidden. It is a gift to have to wait because that lets me know God's working on me, or He's preparing the way, or He's allowing the fighting in the spirit on my behalf. He's doing something to get things prepared and ready for this next level that I'm going to. So I know this is a long recording, like 20 something minutes, because most people don't even like listen to long recordings anymore. People want like 3 and 4 minute recordings. I get it. But there are some things you just can't rush. And I prayed to God that I was just able to crunch, 13 or so hours of meditating and prayer and listening to sermons and Bible study into this short little broadcast to help you. Because I'm praying that the bricks are released from you and that your eyes are open. And instead of, the cries and the tears and the worry and the stressing, you're able to take a look at your life and say, okay, God, obviously there's a reason why things haven't moved along. Let me start with repenting of whatever I need to repent of, Father. Okay, God. Let me start with diving deeper into understanding what's going on. Let me take a look at your nature and your flow. Let me see what's going on here. Are you molding me? Because I need to, I don't know, repent of my sins, or I need to, budget my finances better, or I need to treat people better, or I need to what? So are you molding me? Because there's sometimes, I know I'm drifting, but just let me go for a moment. Sometimes, and we don't know it because we can only see it in hindsight, God can't give us too much too fast because we will mess ourselves up. And in fact, in that same chapter in my book, I say something like, I just thank God for hiding me from myself, because I didn't realize that, God, if I would have gotten right what I wanted at that time, I would have dropped so many people from my life. I won't even go into detail, but I would have done some things, and I probably would have went on off to a whole nother, who knows, country, another part of the world, something like, you know what, I'm good. I don't want to be around nobody. I would have missed out on so many opportunities to grow through situations I needed to grow through. Does that make sense? So anyway, without going into that, I pray that somehow you've been encouraged and inspired to realize that the way that we wait on God, and especially when we're in a season of being hidden, is we dive deeper. It's an open invitation to go deeper and deeper and deeper in our relationship with Him, examine ourselves, trust that He's either working on us, moving some people or things out of the way, or we're just waiting on that timing. Waiting on that timing. Remember, Ruth did not always get Naomi and Ruth a little mixed up. N comes before R, so that's how I remember Naomi comes before Ruth. So imagine if Ruth would have not waited and not, stuck with Naomi. She never would have met Boaz, never would have married Boaz, never would have been the great-great-great-grandmother of David, or however you want to say it. Never would have happened. Never would have happened. And apparently, she was a nice-looking person. Now, this is me just in my own thought. I assume she probably could have married whoever she wanted to. I don't know. That's just me doing my little add-on. But my point is, she stayed, and she stayed by her side, and she waited. And God turned around and look what He did. You see what I'm saying? The same with what we talked about in the story with Jesus, and we talked about, with Moses and everybody. Everything has to be done in the right timing. So because I now know that, and that's now baked into my spirit, something's baking in my spirit now. I feel like I baked a cake the entire day on Saturday. Now I'm able to wait without the anxiousness, and I'm able to wait without the worry and the stressing about it, or just kind of, I don't even know the right word to use, but just that being uncomfortable with it. Now I'm like, okay, so this is an open invitation. Let me go deeper. Oh, okay. God, show me what it is that you're doing. Oh, okay. I'm possibly not ready for that next level yet, because you need me to go back to these building blocks and work on 2-3 things that I need to get on straight so I can be ready. And that's exactly what I'm doing right now, by the way. You get my point? So now there's a rejoicing. Now I understand how I can rejoice in the Lord always, even in my waiting, even when I don't have the answer. So I love you all. This is an incredibly long broadcast. 30 minutes has been a long time since I've done a 30-minute one. Plus, I'm doing it from my phone. I'm not on my nice mics and all that. So I apologize about the audio. But I pray you've been blessed by this. I love you all. This is Z with Unlocking Greatness Podcast. Bye-bye.